When we talk about the Ramayana, the version that usually comes to mind is Valmiki's ancient epic. But if you travel to the southern Indian state of Kerala, you'll find a different text dominating the cultural landscape, the Adhyatma Ramayanam. This specific version was translated and brought to the masses by a 16th century poet named Thunchath Ezhuthachan. Today, he is widely revered as the father of the Malayalam language. He poured his life into translating thousands of verses from Sanskrit into Malayalam, creating a massive foundational pillar of South Indian literature. But Ezhuthachan's massive undertaking raises an obvious question. Why would a master linguist spend his life adapting an alternative text instead of Valmiki's universally accepted original? To understand his choice, we have to look at a strict ancient rule called ridiculed. This was a literary law stating that the absolute highest level of spiritual authority belonged exclusively to texts authored by enlightened, divine sages. Valmiki's epic perfectly aligned with this standard. His text grounded the story, treating the hero, Rama, primarily as an incredibly noble and just mortal king. The Adhyatma Ramayanam took a completely different approach. It elevated Rama's status to that of a supreme god, centering the narrative around divine reverence. Here is where the problem starts. Despite focusing entirely on a divine subject, the original Adhyatma Ramayanam was written by an ordinary, mortal Brahmin. It completely violated the law of ridiculed. Ezhuthachan deliberately chose to translate a legally unauthorized book. Tracing the history of that original rejected manuscript reveals a bizarre story of cosmic rules and divine interference. Centuries earlier, an unnamed Brahmin wrote the original Adhyatma Ramayanam out of pure devotion. He naively believed the heavy focus on faith would earn the text widespread respect. Instead, elite scholars mocked him. They dismissed the idea that a mere mortal could present a spiritual text in a world governed by ancient sages. The public humiliation was total. Unable to face his peers, the heartbroken author abandoned his homeland and wandered deep into an uninhabited forest. Miles from civilization, night fell. Exhausted, he collapsed beneath the massive roots of a banyan tree, using his rejected manuscript as a makeshift pillow. As he slept, his life's work was on the verge of fading into total obscurity. Then, something in the forest intervened. Around midnight, a Gandharva, a glowing celestial being, stepped out of the dark trees and gently woke the exhausted author. The Brahmin reluctantly explained his presence, confessing the severe public humiliation and the total failure of his book. The Gandharva listened, then offered a highly specific set of instructions. He told the author to leave the forest immediately and travel to the distant Gokarna temple in time for the sacred Shivaratri festival. He was told to wait by the temple's eastern gate as evening approached. There, he would see a highly radiant Brahmin walking toward him, followed closely by 4 dogs. The celestial being gave one strict final condition. The author must hand his manuscript to this radiant man, but if asked, he must never reveal who sent him. The author didn't know it yet, but the Gandharva was actively setting up a loophole. He was plotting to trick the universe into validating a mortal's rejected book. The author survived the arduous journey, arriving at the arched entrance of the Gokarna temple just as the Shivaratri crowds reached their peak. The festival was in full swing, filling the night air with intense energy and firelight. Near the eastern gate, the Gandharva's prophecy materialized. A glowing man approached with 4 dogs, and with trembling hands, the author surrendered his book. The glowing man looked at the manuscript, then sharply demanded to know who had instructed the author to find him. Remembering his promise, the mortal stood in terrified silence. That silence saved the text. By refusing to speak, the author confirmed that this encounter had been orchestrated by a celestial force. The radiant figure was Veda Vyasa, the ultimate ancient sage, and the 4 dogs trailing him were physical manifestations of the 4 foundational Vedas. Recognizing the devotion behind the text, Vyasa sprinkled holy water from his vessel onto the manuscript. In an instant, the mortal rules were bypassed, and the book was granted supreme spiritual authority. But Vyasa's blessing came with a realization. He recognized the illegal meddling of a Gandharva in mortal affairs, and that required a severe punishment. Vyasa cursed the celestial being, stripping him of his status and banishing him to be reborn on earth as an ordinary mortal. Centuries later, that fallen Gandharva lived out his earthly sentence. He was born in Kerala, and his name was Thunchath Ezhuthachan. When Ezhuthachan chose to translate the Adhyatma Ramayanam, he was fulfilling his cosmic destiny, championing the exact text he had sacrificed his celestial life to protect.